How was your day? Maybe you carried something today that no one else could see. A responsibility, a worry, a weight that just didn't let go. There was a god who felt that too. His name was Ra, the son of ancient Egypt. He rose every morning not because he wanted to, because if he didn't, the world ended. If today had a little of that, he knows where you've been. You don't have to hold anything tonight. Just rest and listen. This story starts where the sun goes when you can't see it anymore, in the dark, in the deep, still moving toward morning. It is the 5th hour of the night. Then it isn't. Something vast moves in the darkness ahead, scales. Coiled. Enormous. Apep, the serpent of chaos, fills the passage. Set hurls his spear into the dark. Apep writhes. The boat keeps moving. Ra does not look back. He has done this before. He will do this again and again. Every single night, without end. Here is the question this story asks: what does it cost to be the thing the world depends on? Ra cannot rest, cannot stop. The sun does not take days off, and still, every morning, he rises. You know what it is to keep going when you're tired. To show up, because someone needs you to. Ra kept showing up for 3,000 years. Tonight, he shows up for you too. You've already done the hard part. Whatever today asked of you, you answered. Now the night is here. This is what night was made for. The sun goes down. The world keeps turning, you rest. This is what we do here. Every week. One story. One myth that has been carrying people through the dark for longer than most things have existed. Something ancient that still has something to say. Get comfortable now. Find your warmth, adjust your pillow. If you drift off before Ra reaches the eastern gate, he won't mind. He has watched over sleeping mortals since the world began. This is only the beginning. The part where Ra faces Isis, and what she asks of him, that's still ahead. But not tonight. Tonight just this. Just the boat, moving through the dark. If tonight felt like something, subscribe. We'll be here next week. Another story, another night like this. Now back to Ra. Before the world had land or sky, there was none. The primordial dark water, not emptiness. Possibility. Everything that could ever exist, waiting. And then Ra opened his eye. He spoke his own name, and the world became. Not built, not made by hand, spoken into existence. The ancient Egyptians understood names are not labels. Names are the thing itself. He made Shu, the air, and Tefnut, moisture. They were his children, born of his breath. From them came Jeb and Nut, earth and sky. From those two came Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys. The world unfolded like a family. And then Ra established the journey, east to west, every day. The 12 hours of daylight, the 12 hours of night, the same path, the same enemy waiting, the same dawn earned again. The Egyptians called this cycle the Maat. Balance, truth, the right order of things. As long as Ra kept moving, Maat held. If Ra stopped, even once, chaos would return, Apep would win, darkness forever. And so the oldest story began. Not once, not twice, but every single day for 3,000 years. Tonight we follow him. Into the day, into the dark, all the way to morning. Ra was not always old. In the beginning, before time had shape, he was everything. The sun, the air, the possibility of light. He did not rule the world. He was the world. His names were many. Ra, Horakti, Ra, who is Horus of the horizon. Each name was a different face of the same light. The Egyptians understood that the sun at dawn is different from the sun at noon. The Manjet, the day boat, was not a ship exactly. It was a vessel of possibility. What carried Ra across the sky was not wind or oar, but the faith of every living thing below. Belief was the engine. Among the crew sailed Thoth, Ibis, headed, unhurried, always writing. He recorded everything Ra passed over. Every field, every face, every small act of justice or cruelty done under the sun. Nothing was lost. Thoth was the one who never panicked. When Ra was sick, when Ra wept, Thoth wrote it down and kept moving. Some people hold the world steady not by fighting, but by continuing to record it accurately. Maat stood at the prow. She always stood at the prow. She was Ra's daughter, truth made visible, and she went ahead of him into every hour of the day. The sun does not rise without truth preceding it. The feather of Maat. You've heard of this. After death, the heart is weighed against it. If your heart is lighter than the feather, truth, honesty, love, you pass. Heavier and Amit waits. Maybe you know that feeling. The quiet inventory of whether you lived well today. Hathor was there too. The eye of Ra, the sun's fierce love made flesh. She was joy and she was terror. She could destroy the world laughing. She could heal it with a song. The Egyptians were not afraid of contradiction in their gods. And Set, here is where the story gets strange and honest. Set was the god of chaos, of storms, of the desert's killing heat. He murdered Osiris. He was exiled, feared, difficult. And yet, every single night, Set was the one who fought Apep. The Egyptians kept Set in the story. They did not remove him. They understood that the force which brings storms also breaks the serpent's coils. Chaos, when aimed rightly, becomes defense. That's the part that matters. These were Ra's companions, not a perfect crew, a real one. A recorder, a balance, a fierce joy, a dangerous ally. The things you actually need to cross a difficult sky. The first hour of the day began at the eastern horizon. Akhet, the place of transformation, not simply sunrise. The Egyptians understood dawn as a kind of rebirth. Ra did not just rise, he was reborn. Khupri, the scarab beetle, was Ra's dawn form. The Egyptians watched dung beetles roll their balls across the sand and saw something holy, a creature that transforms what it finds into what it needs. Every morning, Ra did the same. At Heliopolis, the city of the sun, priests rose before dawn. They believed their chanting helped Ra rise. Not metaphorically. Literally. They thought their voices were part of what moved the sun. Maybe they were right. The second hour, the third, Ra crossed the sky and the world went about its life beneath him. Farmers bent into fields. Children ran along the Nile's banks. Women ground grain in the shade. He saw all of it. At noon, the sixth hour, Ra became Ra Horakti, Horus of the horizon, the sun in its full power. He did not slow. He did not rest. The zenith is not a destination. It is simply the midpoint of a crossing. The seventh hour brought the afternoon, the light softening, the shadows lengthening, the Nile turning copper. The world was beautiful in a different way now. Not the sharp beauty of morning, but the warm beauty of something that has lasted through a difficult day. The Egyptians painted Ra as an old man in the evening hours. Adam, the setting sun, ancient and heavy, limbed, leaning on his staff. They were not being unkind. They were being honest about what a full day costs. You've been there. The end of a long day when you can feel it in your body. All of it. The hours, the decisions, the being responsible for things. And still you kept going. Renew that weight. The Amenti gate opened. The western cliffs swallowed the light. The world went dark, not because Ra abandoned it, but because he went somewhere the living cannot follow. He went into the dark so morning could be earned again. The Mesektet, the night boat, was waiting. Different from the day boat. Smaller. Older, the crew changed. The companions of the dark are not the companions of the light, but some of them overlap. The first cavern of the Doet was called Emi Duet. What is in the underworld? The dead lined the walls. Not frightened. They knew this boat. Its passing meant the night was moving. Moving meant morning was possible. Here is the part most people miss. Ra's light did not just illuminate the underworld. It fed it. The dead needed his passing to stay anchored. Without Ra's journey, the dead would drift. This is what makes it a gift, not just a crossing. The second cavern, the third. Ra did not stop. The dot's hours do not pause, just as the day's hours do not pause. Moving was the only option. Moving was survival, that's all survival ever is. In the fourth cavern dwelt Sokar, the god of silence and death's deeper country. Ra slowed here. Not because he feared Sokar, but because some places require you to slow down. Some silences must be honored. The fourth cavern was the place where the body and the soul were briefly separated. The Egyptians believed the bay, the soul, had to travel apart from the cat, the body, through this passage. Even Ra separated here. Even gods know what it is to be divided. Then the fifth cavern. Stay with this. It matters. This is where Apep waits, not ahead. Here. Always here. The fifth and sixth caverns, every night, without exception. The Serpent of Chaos does not take breaks. Apep was not born evil. The Egyptians did not think in those terms. Apep was entropy. The tendency of things to fall apart, to stop, to return to the original dark. He was not the enemy of Ra personally. He was the enemy of continuation itself. Set raised his spear. This is the moment the ancient Egyptians reenacted. In their temples, in their rituals, in the spitting on painted images of Apep. They were not being superstitious. They were helping. They believed that. The spear struck. Apep recoiled. Not destroyed, never destroyed. He cannot be permanently killed. He will be here again tomorrow night. And the night after. This is not a story about final victory. It is a story about showing up, night after night, to fight the same fight. The night boat moved through. Ra did not speak. He was tired, the deepest tiredness, the kind that lives in the bones after years of fighting the same thing. But he kept moving. That is all a hero is. Someone who keeps moving. And here the story shifts, because Ra was not alone in the dot. Osiris was here too. Not alive, not dead, something between. And once each night, at the deepest hour, Ra and Osiris would meet. Osiris was what Ra would become. Ra was what Osiris had been. The living sun and the dead king. They needed each other. A sun without the dead to warm has no purpose. A death without the promise of morning is just an ending. At midnight, the exact middle of the night, Ra and Osiris merged. One body, two souls for a single heartbeat. The texts say that in this moment Ra gained the power to continue, and Osiris gained the warmth to endure. The Egyptians called this the mystery of the two lands. The world above and the world below completing each other. You cannot have a sun without an underworld. You cannot have a morning without the dark journey that earns it. The eighth cavern, then the ninth. The dead became fewer here, the deep dot thinning out. The boat was moving faster now, drawn toward the gate by the growing pull of morning. The serpent of dawn began to stir. In the 10th cavern, a great serpent appeared, but this one was not Apep. This was Mihin, the protective serpent, who coiled around the solar barque to shield it through the most dangerous final passage. Not all serpents are enemies. The 11th cavern, and Ra began to change. The aged figure of Adam, the heavy Adam of evening, began to lighten, the falcon head of Ra Horakti returning. Khupri, the scarab, the dawn form, beginning to emerge. The rebirth had begun. The 12th cavern, the last one, was the narrowest. The walls pressed close. The passage nearly blocked. This is where Apep made one final attempt, and where Set fought with everything he had, and where Ra had to be entirely himself to get through. The spear drove home. Apep coiled back, and the gate, the eastern gate of the world, opened. The dawn serpent Nahakau opened its mouth wide, and Ra sailed through, and the sun rose, and morning happened again. And the priests at Heliopolis saw the horizon lighten, and they raised their voices, and they believed. They were certain that this was partly because of them. And maybe it was. You've been there too. The small thing you did that mattered more than you knew. The ancient Egyptians did not watch the sunset in silence out of sadness. They watched it in silence because they understood something we have mostly forgotten. The going down is sacred. The ending of a day is an act of courage, not a failure. The word they used, Amenti, meant the west, the land of the dead, and also where Ra goes, the same direction. In Egyptian thought, the dead and the setting sun went the same way. Neither was a loss. Both were a journey. Egyptian children were taught to watch sunsets. Not to mourn, to witness. To say, look, the sun god is beginning his night crossing. Look, he goes into the dark for us. That is the thing that stays with you. The rituals at sunset were not prayers for safety. They were acknowledgments. We see you going. We know what you face. We'll be here when you come back. That is not religion exactly. That is friendship with the sun. They believed that if they did not witness it, if no one watched Ra go down, the crossing might fail. Witnessing mattered. Seeing mattered. Maybe the oldest spiritual act is simply paying attention to the things that keep the world running while everyone sleeps. But there was a story inside this story, a wound that even Ra carried. Because Ra had grown old, truly old, the way a god grows old, and someone had noticed. Isis, goddess of magic, healer, mother, the most powerful spell worker in all of Egypt, had decided she wanted Ra's secret name, his true name, the name that was also the source of all creation. The plan was simple and terrible. She gathered Ra's saliva from where it had fallen to earth, because even gods drool when they age. And from it she fashioned a serpent, and she placed it in Ra's path. Ra walked his morning path. The ritual, the same steps he had taken since the world began, and the serpent bit him. Made from his own substance. He could not heal it. His own magic had no purchase on something made entirely from himself. Ra called for help. Every healer came. Every god tried, nothing worked. The poison ran through him. Divine venom from a divine source. And the sky flickered and the world grew afraid. This is what it looks like when the thing you depend on is sick. Isis came last. She knelt beside Ra and she said, "Tell me your secret name, your true name. I can heal you, but only if you give me that." And Ra understood instantly. He had been outmaneuvered by love and cleverness and a serpent made from his own drool. He refused. For a long time, the pain burning, the world dimming. He refused. He offered her other names, Ra, Adam, great names, real names, but not the true one. Isis waited. She had time. And then Ra gave it to her. His true name. He did not whisper it. The texts say he let it pass from his heart into hers, directly, without words. Because some things cannot be said. They can only be given. Isis healed him. Instantly, completely. The magic working because the true name gave her complete power over him. She saved him. And Ra, once healed, did not punish her. He looked at her for a long time, and then he went back to his crossing. The Egyptians told this story not to warn against Isis. She was beloved. They told it to say even Ra can be vulnerable. Even the sun can be slowed. Even the most powerful thing can be brought to its knees by love and cleverness. And still it rises. There is something in that story for everyone who has been reduced. By illness, by betrayal, by simply getting older, and found their way back to the work that defines them. The sun keeps moving. That's the whole point. Hathor had her own chapter in Ra's story, and it was one of the most dangerous. Ra, in anger at humanity's rebellion against him, sent his Aether to destroy them. She went. She was very good at it. She was too effective. Ra looked down and saw that the humans, the ones he had made, who told him stories, who watched his sunsets in silence, were nearly gone. He changed his mind. But Hathor was beyond stopping. Ra ordered the gods to brew 7,000 jugs of beer, dyed red with ochre to look like blood. They poured it across the land. Hathor saw it, drank it, and fell into a long, deep, beautiful sleep. The world was saved by a lot of beer and a long rest. When Hathor woke, she did not remember. She was simply Hathor again, gentle, musical, the goddess of love. Ra wept when he saw what his anger had nearly cost. He kept that grief. You can see it in him, if you know how to look. Ra carried that grief into the sky with him after that, every day. The Egyptians noticed. The light at certain times of year has a quality to it that is not quite joy. They said that is Ra remembering. After the near destruction of humanity, Ra withdrew to the heavens, higher than before. He would still make the crossing, but he was different, more formal, more careful. The gods who had been with him on earth now felt his distance. Nut, the sky goddess, transformed herself into a great cow to carry Ra on her back, higher and higher. Above the world he had nearly destroyed out of love for it. Even this was devotion. Maybe especially this. The 8 great gods, the Ogdode, supported Nut's legs as she carried Ra upward. They became the supports of the sky. The hierarchy of Egyptian heaven was established in that moment, in an act of grief management and divine logistics. Shu, god of air, stood between earth and sky, holding them apart. He stood there forever. Sometimes that is what air does. It keeps things from collapsing into each other. You need someone to stand in the middle and hold things separate. This was the world Ra built and maintained and sometimes nearly destroyed and then repaired. It was not a perfect world. The Egyptians never claimed it was. They claimed it was maintained. That is a different and more honest promise. Every pharaoh was Ra's son on earth. Not metaphorically. The Egyptians were specific. The pharaoh's first duty was to maintain Maat, balance truth, the right order of things. And when the pharaoh failed, as they sometimes did, Maat faltered. The farmers knew this connection. When the Nile flooded well, they said Ra is in harmony with Maat. When drought came, they said, something has gone wrong with the cosmic order. They were not superstitious. They were paying close attention to something real. Ra's full circuit, day and night, took exactly 24 hours. The Egyptians divided it into 12 hours of light and 12 of dark. They invented the 24-hour day to describe Ra's journey. Time itself is shaped by a sun god's crossing. They divided the sky into 36 sections. The deacons, each ruled by a star. As Ra crossed the sky, the deacons tracked his progress. Astronomy began as theology. The stars were the road markers on Ra's highway. The Book of the Dead, which Thoth wrote or helped write or inspired, was a guide for navigating the dot. Not a list of rules, a map, a companion for the night crossing that every soul would eventually need to make. Ra had already made it 10,000 times. Ra had walked this path before every human soul. He had mapped it. In every cavern he had faced what was there and kept moving. When a soul entered the dot, they were not walking into the unknown. They were walking in Ra's footsteps. The Egyptians were not afraid of death. They were meticulous about it. They preserved the body, named the soul, wrote the spells, followed the map. Death was a crossing, not an ending. And Ra had proven it could be made, night after night, for 3,000 years. And Ra kept rising, after the Isis crisis, after the Hathor disaster, after millennia of Apep, millennia of the same fight, millennia of the 12 dark caverns. He rose because the alternative was unthinkable. Because somewhere below, people needed the light. The temples at Abu Simbel were built so that twice a year, in February and October, the rising sun would enter the inner sanctuary and illuminate the statues of Ra and Ramesses together. Not a coincidence, a calculation. Love made geometric. 3,000 years of worship. 3,000 years of priests at dawn. 3,000 years of farmers watching Ra cross and offering what they had. Not out of fear, out of relationship. You keep showing up for the things that keep showing up for you. The day boat left the eastern horizon at the first breath of morning. Not dramatically, quietly. The way important things always begin. A line of gold at the edge of the world, and then more gold, and then the disk itself, unhurried and certain. The first hour was always the lightest. Something about fresh beginnings, even for a god who had done this 10,000 times. The light was soft. The shadows were long and blue. The air over the Nile smelled of water and green things. Below the Barque, a farmer named Amenhotep. The texts do not tell us his full name, but someone like him was already in his field. The Nile's flood had left perfect black silt. He pressed seeds into it with his thumb. Ra watched. Thoth was writing. He always wrote what Ra passed over. The farmer's thumb in the silt. The child asleep still in the village behind him. The woman grinding grain, singing something under her breath. Thoth recorded the singing too. Maat stood at the prow and felt the balance of the morning. 2 fields under cultivation. 1 field left fallow. A market opening in the city where prices were fair. A judge hearing a case with an open mind. She nodded once. The day was starting well. The second hour brought the barque over the delta, that vast green fan where the Nile spread into many mouths before reaching the sea. Ra loved the delta. The Egyptians could always feel it. The light there had a particular warmth in the second hour. In a temple at Bubastis, children were singing. They sang the same song their parents had sung, and their grandparents before them. The hymn of Ra's morning crossing. The words were old enough that no one fully understood them anymore. They sang them anyway. Hathor heard the singing. She began to play her sistrum, the rattle, in response. The sound fell downward like rain. The children did not hear it, but they sang better after. They always did, when Hathor listened. The third hour brought the barque inland, over the desert. This was Ra's most ancient domain. Before Egypt was green, he had burned over these sands. He remembered. The desert was where he had first understood what loneliness cost. The desert was not empty. It never is. Nomads moved through it, trading, surviving, reading the stars. Ra watched a caravan pick its way between dunes. They had been walking since before dawn. They would keep walking until after dark. He recognized the feeling. The fourth hour. The barque moved south over Thebes, the great city, home of Amun. Here Ra was worshipped as Amun, Ra the hidden and the visible, the breath inside the sun. Two things that seem opposite, held in one name. At Karnak, the festival of Apep was held each year. Amun, Ra leaving his temple to visit the southern sanctuary. His statue carried on a barque through crowds who lined the streets, who threw flowers, who wept with something that looked like relief. Their god was walking among them. Ra felt these festivals. The Egyptians believed it, and the texts support it. The god was strengthened by worship, not made dependent, strengthened. The relationship ran both ways. You've been there too. The moment someone's belief in you made you more capable of the thing they believed in. The fifth hour, the midday approach. The light hardened, the shadows shortened, the desert below shimmered. This was the hour Ra was most alone, at noon. The light is so total it becomes isolating. Everything else goes inside. A child in Memphis had found a shaded spot by the river. She was watching a dragonfly. She was not thinking about Ra or theology or the cosmic order. She was watching a dragonfly. Ra noticed. He found it. The texts do not say this, but they say something like it, restful. The sixth hour, the zenith. Ra became Ra Horakti, the complete form. Every name he had ever carried was present simultaneously. Every moment of his history visible in the single burning point of noon. Below the zenith, every shadow was shortest. Every truth was hardest to avoid. The Egyptians used the noon hour for judgment. Cases heard in open courtyards where nothing could hide in shadow. Maat's influence was strongest at noon, the seventh hour, and the descent began. The barque turned imperceptibly westward. The light shifted from white to gold. The shadows began their slow reach eastward. The world exhaled. In the afternoon, the marketplace at Memphis filled again. The vendors who had sheltered at noon returned to their stalls. The smell of bread and spices and the Nile mixed together. An old man sold amulets of the solar disk. He sold the same amulets his father had sold. The eighth hour brought the barque over the pyramids of Giza. Ra passed here every day. The pyramids were built to catch his light. The polished limestone casing stones that once covered them would have blazed at this hour, visible from the horizon. The pyramids were resurrection machines. The pharaoh's soul, freed from the body at death, would ascend along the pyramid's angled sides, following the sun's rays, into the sky, into the solar barque, into Ra's company. This was the promise. Khufu had built the Great Pyramid so that certain chambers aligned with specific stars. Orion, the imperishable stars that never set. He built doorways for his soul to travel. With precision, with mathematics, with complete certainty that the journey was possible. Ra passed over Giza every day for 4,000 years. The pyramids were still there when Egypt's civilization ended. They are still there now. Ra has passed over them again today. He will tomorrow. The math on this is extraordinary. The 9th hour. The afternoon deepening. The Nile below beginning its color change, from blue, green to copper, gold as the sun's angle shifted. Fishermen on the river pulled in their nets. The catch had been good. One of them looked up and said something. The texts do not tell us what. A prayer. A thank you. Ra heard. He always heard. Even when he did not answer, he heard. The Egyptians understood this. They did not always expect an answer. They expected to be heard. That was enough. The 10th hour. The light going amber rose. The desert now beautiful in a way it was not at noon. The Nile turning colors that have no name. The air cooling. The long day beginning to show its ending. The children at the Nile's edge were being called in for the evening. A mother's voice, carrying across the water, specific and warm. The child looked up once at the sky. The child did not know what they were seeing, just that it was beautiful. The 11th hour, the Barque approaching Amenti, the light going deep gold, then rose, then the colors that don't have names. The shadows stretching east, as if reaching toward the night that was coming. Thoth was still writing. Maat stepped back from the prow. She did not leave. She simply moved to the center of the bark. At dusk, balance is more internal than external. You carry it inside you, or you don't have it at all. The 12th hour of day. The final approach. Ra becoming Adam fully now. Ancient, staff in hand, the day's weight fully visible. Not broken by it, completed by it. There is a difference. The Egyptian priests at the Western temples raised their voices. Not in mourning, in thanksgiving. You have crossed. You have done it. Now go and do the other thing. We will be here. The send-off of people who trust in a return. The gate closed. Egypt went dark. And Ra, tired complete, carrying the day like a stone in his chest, began the night boat crossing. The 12 caverns waited. Apep waited. And Osiris waited at the center of it all. The first cavern of the night crossing. The dead were waiting. Not threatening, just present. They lined the walls the way an audience lines a theater. They had been waiting all day. Ra was the only light they would see until morning. The second cavern. Ra spoke to the dead here. Not long speeches, single words. Their names, he knew them. Thoth had written them all, and Ra had read them. He called each soul in the second cavern by name. They straightened when he did. The third cavern was ruled by Sokar's lesser attendants, the guardians of stillness. They did not challenge Ra. They simply recorded his passage. In some places, the most important thing is simply that someone notes you came through. The fourth cavern, Sokar's deeper domain. The crossing slowed here. This was where the night felt most like night. Even Ra's light went quieter here. As if it understood this was not a place for brightness. In the fourth cavern, the serpent Apophis was not yet present, but his influence was. The walls here were cold. The air, if air existed in the Duat, moved differently. Set's grip on his spear tightened. Not yet, but soon. Here is the part that matters about Set. He was guilty of terrible things. He had murdered Osiris. He had scattered his brother's body across Egypt. He had done it out of jealousy and ambition, not chaos, which in some ways is worse. And yet here he was, every night, fighting Apep so Ra could continue. The Egyptians did not resolve this, they held it. A murderer who protects. A chaos god who serves order. The story does not ask you to forgive Set. It asks you to see what he does with his guilt. You've been there too. The moment you did something right because of, not despite, something difficult in you. The anger that became protection. The fear that became care. The part of you that surprised you by showing up when it mattered. The fifth cavern. Apep's cavern. The air changed, if the Duat had air. Something vast and patient moved in the darkness ahead. Set raised his spear without being told. He had been here before. He knew the smell of the end of the world. Apep emerged slowly. This was his method, not a sudden attack, a slow revelation. First the coils, thick as stone columns. Then the scales, dark blue, black and cold. Then the eyes, ancient and patient, the eyes of something that is not in a hurry because it has always been here. The crew did not speak. Set did not speak. Ra did not speak. The confrontation had its own language, older than words, older than Egypt. The language of continuation meeting the language of cessation. Set moved first. Always Set who moved first. He drove the spear into Apep's flank. The same place, every night, where the scales were thinnest. He had found this place long ago, and he hit it every time without failure. Expertise born of 10,000 repetitions. Apep shrieked. If serpents shriek, if sound existed in the dot. Something happened in that moment that reached the world above. The Egyptians called it the earthquake, the low sound that sometimes runs through the earth at night. Apep, being wounded again. The night boat moved through. The passage cleared. Apep, wounded, sank back into the darkness of his waiting place, because he was already regenerating, already recoiling back into the coiled readiness of something that cannot be permanently destroyed. Set lowered his spear, no triumph in it, no celebration. He had done the thing that needed doing, and there was no drama in that, only the quiet dignity of a job completed, and a night not over. The sixth cavern, the worst of the night, was past. The passage widened slightly. Ra felt the change, a loosening in the dark, the way you feel when a crisis has passed even before you can verify it. The body knows first. The dead in the sixth cavern were different from those in the first, older, more settled. These were souls who had been here longer. They did not reach toward Ra's light. They received it quietly, like people who have learned to accept warmth without needing to chase it. The ancient Egyptians understood Maat, truth, balance, justice, not as rules but as description. Maat was not what you should do. Might was what the universe actually does when left to itself. Balance is the default state. Imbalance is the thing that requires effort to maintain. Might's feather weighed nothing. That was the point. A heart as light as a feather is a heart that has not accumulated the weight of cruelty, of dishonesty, of refusing to see what is there. It is not empty, it is unencumbered. The Egyptians listed 42 confessions the dead would make in the hall of Maat. Not sins they had committed, but things they had not done. I have not stolen. I have not lied. I have not caused suffering. The ethics of subtraction. What you held back mattered as much as what you did. The Egyptians did not believe in original sin, the idea that you were broken from the start. They believed in maintained balance. The default was wholeness. You either kept Maat or you created disorder. The disorder was not who you were. It was what you had done. That is what Ra carried with him every night through the dot. Not judgment, but the principle that the world wants to be in balance. His crossing was balance in motion. The sun and the dark and the dead and the living, all maintaining the order that keeps everything from collapsing into Apep's dark. The seventh cavern, the hall of Osiris. Ra could feel it before he arrived. The dead felt it too. A different quality in the dark, not lighter, but warmer. Something had been here so long it had become the warmth of the place itself. Osiris waited at the center of the hall, green-skinned, the color of growth, of the Nile's fertile silt, of things that return after seeming to have ended. Wrapped in white, the color of the mummy's bandages, of bones of completion. Ra and Osiris looked at each other, not as rivals. They had never been rivals. As two aspects of the same truth. The sun that goes down is the same sun that rises. The king who dies is the same king who is remembered. Death and continuation, inseparable. At midnight, the exact center of the night, they merged. The Egyptian texts describe it as a single body with two souls, present for one heartbeat only. Ra's warmth and Osiris's permanence, briefly the same thing. The dead in the hall were still. This was the holiest moment in their world. The instant that the sun visited the underworld, not just in passing, but in union. The warmth of that instant stayed in the hall for a long time after. Ra emerged from the hall renewed. Not different, renewed. The same god he had always been, but with something restored. Osiris remained, settled back into his role as king of the dead, his own form slightly warmer for the encounter. The eighth cavern. The night beginning its long turn toward morning. The dead here were the most ancient. Those who had died so long ago their names existed only in Thoth's records. They received Ra's light like a distant memory of warmth. In the eighth cavern there were also gods. The old ones, the ones whose worship had faded, whose temples were abandoned, whose names even the priests had stopped saying. They were here too. Ra greeted them. He remembered every name. The ninth cavern. The night was turning. Not visible yet. No color change in the dark of the Duat, but something sensed. The quality of the darkness was different. The journey had a direction again, after the still point of midnight. The 10th cavern. Mehen's protective serpent waited here. The good serpent, the golden-scaled guardian. He coiled around the night boat, as he always did in this passage. His great body a shield against the deepest pressures of the dot. Protected by Mehen, Ra began his transformation. The form of Adam, the aged evening god, was dissolving. The falcon features of Ra, Horakti beginning to reassert, and beneath that, the first stirrings of Khepri. The dawn scarab, the promise of morning. The 11th cavern. Apep made his final attempt here. Not in the 5th cavern, not in the 6th, but here at the end, where Ra was so close to the eastern gate that the loss would be total. Apep was strategic. The chaos of the world always strikes when you can almost see morning. And this time Thoth joined. He stood beside Set and he spoke, not a battle cry but a precise recitation, the names and true nature of Apep, spoken aloud in the correct order. In Egyptian magic, naming a thing completely takes away its power to surprise you. Set's spear and Thoth's words together, the combined force of action and understanding. Apep recoiled, hard this time, harder than the 5th cavern. The passage to the eastern gate cleared completely. For the first time in the crossing, Ra could see ahead to morning. The 12th cavern, the narrowest, the walls almost touching the both sides. The ceiling low enough that Ra had to lower the solar disk, which the texts describe as Ra himself becoming smaller in this passage. Even gods must sometimes make themselves small to get through. At the end of the 12th cavern, the snake Neheka waited. The snake who was not an enemy. He opened his mouth wide, and the night boat entered it. This was the final passage through the body of the dawn serpent, into the world. Through Nehubkau's body, the night boat was transformed. It became the day boat again, the manjet, gleaming renewed, ready for the crossing. And Ra was transformed too. Khepri complete now, the scarab-faced dawn god, the sun fully reborn. The eastern gate opened, just a crack, then all at once. Dawn does not negotiate, it arrives. The sun rose. Again, earned again. By Set's spear and Thoth's words and Mehen's coils and Ra's endurance and Osiris's gift of warmth at midnight. By every priest who had stayed awake to witness. By everyone who had kept faith in the dark. The priests at Heliopolis fell silent when the disk cleared the horizon. Then they began the day hymn. The same words, the same melody that had welcomed Ra every morning for 3,000 years. The god heard it. He always heard it. This is the first climax of Ra's story. Not a battle exactly, though battles happened. The first great achievement, the night crossing, completed again. Morning, earned again. The serpent pushed back again. The impossible routine maintained. But here is what the story knows that the morning does not. This was not the hardest part. Ahead, in the pattern of the days, in the accumulation of the crossings, there would come a day when Ra could not remember why he was doing it. The Egyptians understood this kind of wariness. They built it into Ra's story. The moment when the god himself grew tired of the eternal crossing, not defeated, not broken. Tired, there is an important difference. They had a phrase for it. Arrests in his horizon, spoken of a sunset with particular dignity. Not gone, resting. Not defeated by the dark. Entering it by choice, to do what the night required. The word they used for rest and journey was the same word. And so the morning had become the afternoon, and the afternoon was becoming the dusk again. The crossing completed. The night begun. The story looping back to its own beginning. Not repetition, renewal. Every time Ra reached morning, it was morning for the first time. But there was something Ra had not told the other gods. Something he had been carrying for many crossings. Something that was not weariness but was close to it. A longing for someone who would understand what this cost. Not to stop. Just to be understood. Thoth saw it. Of course Thoth saw it. Thoth saw everything. He had been recording it across many crossings. The slight dimming. The increased weight of the staff. The moments of stillness when Ra should have been moving. Thoth came to Ra in the 7th hour. The hour of the first shadow, the beginning of the descent. He did not ask how Ra was feeling. He said, "I have noticed something." And then he read from his private record. That is friendship. Not asking, noticing, and showing you the record. Ra was silent for a long time after Thoth finished. Then he said, and the text preserved this in a form. The crossing is the thing. Not what it costs. The crossing itself. Thoth wrote that down too. Everything Ra said became sacred. Even the things Ra said when he was tired. The crossing is the thing. Maybe you know that. The moment in the middle of something hard when you realize the doing of it is the point. Not the completion. Not the recognition. The actual crossing step and step and step. The barque moved toward Amenti. The light was going rose gold. Below, a child was being put to bed. A mother was telling a story. Something about the sun god, probably, or maybe just a story about a clever animal and a foolish one. Ra heard it too. The child fell asleep before the story ended. The mother continued anyway, just a few more sentences into the sleeping face. Because the ending matters even when the listener has gone. The story deserves to be finished. The gate opened. Ra entered the dark. The night boat was waiting. And somewhere ahead, in the 5th cavern, Apep was already coiling. And Set was already gripping his spear. And Thoth was already readying his papyrus. And the night crossing would begin again. That night, the night after the conversation with Thoth, Ra fought Apep differently. Not harder. More cleanly. He had named what the crossing cost. And in the naming, the cost had become bearable in a different way. Thoth's observation had done that. And at midnight, when Ra merged with Osiris, he told his brother what Thoth had said. Osiris, who had been dead long enough to know things only the dead know, nodded once. He said yes. The crossing is always the thing. That is what I learned when I could no longer cross. The eastern gate, the 12th cavern, Set spear Thoth's naming men's coils Nehebkau's passage. And Ra emerging, the scarab-faced Khepri, young, renewed, carrying everything he had carried and still arriving at morning. Still arriving. Always arriving. Fires Tilam Ax. The sun rose and this time Egypt felt it differently. Not louder, differently. The same priests at Heliopolis stopped mid-hymn for a moment. Something had changed in the quality of the light. They could not explain it. They sang more slowly after, and more carefully, and with more feeling. Ra sailed into the first hour of the new day, and he felt. The texts say something like this, in fragments, in broken passages that scholars still argue over. He felt that the crossing was worth it. Not just that it was necessary. Worth it. Below, the child who had fallen asleep during her mother's story woke with the sun on her face. She did not remember falling asleep. She did not remember the story. But something was in her. Some warmth that had not been there before. And she went outside and looked at the morning with different eyes, or saw. He saw the child looking up at him. The sun in the morning sky. With the uncomplicated morning, love of someone who has not yet been taught to take the dawn for granted. He held that, he carried it into the day. And the barque sailed on. The day continued. But something had settled in Ra, something that would be tested again sorely, when illness came and Isis made her move. For now, in this first climax of the story, the sun was in the sky and it knew why. And that was enough. For now, that was enough. After the first climax, After the morning, Ra felt the crossing was worth it. The days continued. But continuation is not the same as stillness. Something new was moving. Something old, actually. Something that had been watching Ra for a very long time. Ra had grown old over many crossings. Not suddenly, gradually, the way gods age, which is slower than mortals but no less real. His saliva fell more often now. His grip on the barque's rail had changed. Thoth noticed. Isis noticed. The difference was what they did with it. Thoth brought Ra warm water in the evenings. A small thing. The kind of care that doesn't require explanation. Isis studied Ra's morning path. She noted where he walked. She noted what fell from him as he moved. That information was something else entirely. The morning path was Ra's most private ritual. Before the barque, before the sky, he walked a specific route through the realm of the gods. He had walked it since the world began, the same stones, the same turns, the comfort of the unvarying. One morning, Isis had been there before him. She had gathered what she needed from the earth. She had gone home. The serpent she made from Ra's own substance was waiting in the grass beside the path, coiled, perfect, still, invisible until it was not. Ra walked his morning path. He had walked it 10,000 times before this morning. He was thinking about the day's crossing, the second hour. There was a flood threatening the eastern delta. He would need to direct the light carefully. He was not watching his feet. Sharp, specific, unlike any pain Ra had known, because it was made from him, and his body could not locate it as foreign. The venom moved through divine flesh with terrible speed. Ra stopped. He had never stopped on this path before. He called out, not loudly. Ra did not shout. He said the names of those nearest to him, and they came. Thoth first, then others. They saw immediately what was wrong. The most powerful being in the cosmos, standing still on a garden path, undone by something no larger than his thumb. The sky flickered. Below, in Egypt, people looked up. The sun was still there, but something was wrong with its quality. The shadows fell at wrong angles. The light had a color that had no name. The farmers knew. The priests knew. They began to pray. Every healer tried. Every god brought what they had. Healing magic, sacred words, the most ancient remedies. Nothing held. The venom, made from Ra himself, had no surface for foreign healing to grip. You cannot heal someone with what they are already made of. Isis had not come yet. She was waiting not cruelly, but with the patience of someone who knows their moment. Isis loved Ra. That matters. What she was doing came from love as much as ambition. These things are not always separate. She went to Ra when the other healers had exhausted themselves. She knelt beside him. Not above him, beside him. That choice of position was deliberate and kind. She said, "Tell me what has happened." And she listened to every word. After he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I can heal this. But I need your true name, your real name, not Ra, not Khepri, not Adam. The name that is you entirely." And Ra understood what she was asking, and what it would cost. He said no. He offered her his other names. Each one a gift, real, sacred, meaningful. Not the true one. Isis received each offered name and set it aside. She waited. The venom continued. The sky above Egypt continued its wrong colors. Then Ra looked at Isis for a long time. Not with suspicion, with recognition. He saw what she had done. He saw what she needed. He saw that she had planned this with love in it, and cleverness in it, and the particular desperate need of someone who wanted to know the thing you are most completely. You've been there too. Ra let his true name pass from his heart into hers. No words. The texts are specific, no words. Heart to heart directly, in the way that some things can only be transferred. Not given, shared. The name was still his after, and now also hers. Isis healed him, immediately. The venom left Ra's divine body like shadow leaves a room when you open the curtains, not gradually, entirely, all at once. The sky above Egypt corrected itself. The shadows fell at the right angles. The farmers looked up and felt the change before they understood it. Ra stood. He stood carefully. The way you stand after illness, checking the body's functions one at a time, verifying that the familiar things are still familiar. He was Ra again, fully Ra. But also something else now. Ra who had given his name to another. He did not punish her. This is the part the story holds quietly, without explaining. Ra looked at Isis for a moment. Then he went to prepare for the day's crossing. The texts do not record what he thought. Only what he did. He kept going. The day's crossing was different. Ra had his true name shared now, held by someone else. The thing that had been most entirely his, now also hers. He sailed the sky and felt the difference. Not smaller, not diminished, just known, completely known. Mythology had watched all of it. She had watched from her place at the prow, the one position where she could see everything. She did not intervene. Balance was not the same as prevention. Sometimes balance means letting the difficult thing happen and watching what comes after. Thoth had recorded everything. He always would. He wrote the transfer of the name. Not what it was, that he would never write, but that it had happened, that Ra had given, that Isis had received, that the sun had risen after. Isis went home and thought about what she held. A true name, the source of all creation. Power, certainly, but also intimacy. To know someone's true name is to know them more completely than anyone. That is its own kind of gift, or its own kind of weight. She would use that power. She would use it to heal her son Horus. Placing Ra's secret name into the words of the spell. She would use it to restore the dead and heal the living. The power gathered through deception became the instrument of genuine care. That's the part that stays with you. And Ra kept sailing, day after day, the name shared, Isis knowing, the sun continuing. The Egyptians who heard this story did not miss the point. Knowledge of the most powerful thing, in loving hands, does not destroy that thing, it sustains it. But the crisis had changed the pattern. Not the crossing, that continued. Something in the dynamic of the divine world had shifted. Isis held something that gave her power over the sun, and the sun had given it willingly. The balance of the world had a new element in it. There was one more thing. Ra had withdrawn slightly after the crisis. Not from the crossing, never from the crossing, but from the closer congress with the gods. He was still present, but differently present. As if the giving of the name had taught him something about what to keep closer and what to hold more openly. And then, in the pattern of days that followed the crisis, something else arrived. From the human world, not a threat, a question. The pharaoh Rameses, standing in his innermost temple room at dawn, asked Ra a direct question. Why do you keep going? Ra heard it. He always heard what was asked directly, with full heart in the innermost room. He did not answer in words. He answered with the dawn, with the light that arrived exactly then through the temple's aligned entrance. Touching the altar stone, the pharaoh stood in it. That was the answer. He kept going because this was the answer. Every morning that light touched an altar stone, or a farmer's field, or a child's upturned face. That was the answer. The crossing was worth it, because the things it lit were worth lighting. And now that was the new question. What would threaten those things next? The story was not finished. It was ready to go darker before it went toward the final light. The days after the crisis settled into a new rhythm. Not the old rhythm, a new one. Ra sailed the sky as he always had. But Isis now held his name. And the world, without knowing it, was different for that. Isis began using Ra's name in her healing work. Not loudly. She never announced it. But the spells she worked now had a different depth to them. People healed who had not been expected to heal. Children recovered from fevers by morning. The sick were relieved in ways that surprised even the priests. Ra knew she was using it. He could feel the name being called upon. A distant warmth, like feeling someone speak your name in another room. He did not intervene. He had given it. This was what given meant. Horus, Isis's son, falcon-headed like Ra, young and fierce, had been stung by a scorpion. Isis used Ra's name in the spell that saved him. The boy lived. When he grew into his full power, he carried something of Ra's name in him without knowing it. These things passed through love. Set watched Horus grow. Set, who had fought alongside Ra every night, who had murdered Osiris, who had done terrible things, and continued to do necessary ones. Set watched the son of his murdered brother, and felt something complicated. The story doesn't simplify it, good stories never do. Eventually Horus and Set would fight, the long contest for the rulership of Egypt. That is another story told elsewhere. But here, in Ra's story, Set still manned the night boat every crossing. He still drove his spear into Apep's flank. Whatever his history, his function held. Thoth had been writing something private, not the official record. A separate papyrus, smaller, older papyrus. The kind you use when you are writing something for yourself. He had been working on it across many crossings. A meditation, maybe. An account. When he finished it, he gave it to Ra. In the quiet of the 7th hour, when the descent had begun and the light had gone amber, he handed it over and said nothing. Ra read it in the afternoon light, turning the papyrus slowly. His expression did not change. Then he held it against the solar disk, and it became warm, and he kept it with him. The texts do not tell us what Thoth wrote. Scholars have looked. Nothing survives, if it ever existed as a physical thing. But the story preserves the gesture, the witness who watches everything, writing privately what he sees, and giving it to the one he witnessed. That is a rare kind of care. Below the Barque, in the city of Memphis, a scribe was teaching his student. The lesson was about Ra-E, the full crossing, the 12 hours of day and 12 of night, the names and the meanings. The student was 11 years old and half asleep. The scribe did not stop. Some things need to be said even to the nearly sleeping. The scribe said, Ra does not rest, because if Ra rested, everything would stop. But Ra is not enslaved by this. Ra has chosen it. There is no crossing without a traveler who decides to travel. The student was asleep before the sentence ended. The scribe finished it anyway. The night crossing began again. The Amenti Gate, the night boat, the 12 caverns. Set at his post. Thoth with his papyrus. The official one now. Mahun waiting in the 10th cavern. Apep in the 5th. The structure unchanged across 10,000 repetitions. This night, the night after Thoth gave the papyrus, something was different in the 5th cavern. Apep was larger. Not metaphorically. The texts describe it specifically. The serpent's coils filled more of the passage than usual. The confrontation would require more. Set drove the spear home. It held but barely. Apep's recoil was slower than usual. The coils pulled back but not completely. The passage half cleared. Not enough for the night boat to pass safely. Set looked at Ra. Ra looked at Set, the old murderer and the ancient god. Ra spoke Apep's name. Not the healing name, not what Thoth had used. Something older. Ra's own naming of the serpent from the beginning of the world. When Ra had first known Apep existed and had named what that meant. The oldest name, the most complete one. The passage cleared. The night boat moved through. Set looked at Ra with something that was not quite gratitude and not quite surprise. The look of someone discovering that the person they've been protecting was also capable of protecting themselves. That's a good thing to learn about someone you've served a long time. At midnight, Ra told Osiris what had happened. Not the full story. He rarely told the full story to Osiris. But the essential thing, Apep had been larger, and Ra had spoken the oldest name, and it had worked. Osiris was quiet. Then he said, "You have been remembering yourself." Remembering yourself. Ra held that phrase through the remaining caverns. The 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. He held it the way you hold something small and warm in a cold place. In the transformation through Nehekau's body, it was still there. When he emerged into morning, it came with him. The morning was clear. The Nile below caught the first light with unusual precision, as if the water had been waiting for exactly this quality of sunrise. Ra sailed into the first hour and felt the way you sometimes feel on certain mornings. that the day had already given him something before it fully arrived. Below, in a village near Thebes, a woman who had been sick for several months woke that morning and felt different. She could not explain it. She told her husband she felt like herself again. He brought her water. She drank it at the window, watching the sun rise. She did not know she was looking at what had healed her. She didn't need to know. Ra saw her. He always saw the ones who were coming back from illness. There was something in the quality of their attention on the morning. A gratitude that had no language yet, just the simple act of looking at the day and finding it good. He carried that too. The crossings continued, the days accumulated. Ra had been remembering himself, as Osiris said. And in remembering himself he had been noticing things he had stopped noticing across the millennia. The child with the dragonfly, the fisherman's upward glance, the woman at the window, the small things that answered the large question. Hathor noticed the change in Ra. She did not say anything. She began to play her sistrum in a different key, a lower, warmer key. The music fell on Egypt as a particular quality of afternoon light that painters would spend centuries trying to capture and never quite manage. Maat felt it too, a shift in the overall balance. Not a disruption, a deepening. As if the weight on both sides of her scales had increased equally. More difficulty, more beauty, more everything. And the scales had remained level. She nodded once. This was what maturing balance felt like. And then, in the deepened days, in the richer crossings, a new thing appeared in the underworld. Not Apep. Something else. Something that had not been in the dot before this era. The texts call it the hours of forgetting. A cavern that appeared where no cavern had been. In the hours of forgetting, there were no dead, not the familiar dead. There were memories. Specifically forgotten things. The things that had fallen out of the world's knowing. The songs no one sang anymore. The names that no one spoke. The faces of people who had died and whose families had died and whose line was simply gone. Ra slowed the night boat here. Not stopped. He could not stop, but slowed. He looked at the walls. He recognized some of them. He had seen the originals. The living people, the actual songs. When he had passed over them in their time. He was perhaps the last one who remembered. He spoke. Not the names of the dead. These were not the dead exactly. He spoke the last known version of a song from a village that no longer existed. He spoke a name from before Egypt had its name. Just those two things. The shapes on the walls steadied slightly. Thoth wrote it all down the cavern. The shapes, what Ra had spoken. He wrote it carefully and put it in a separate section of his record. The section for things that existed now only in his writing. The archive of the almost gone. Maybe that is what archives are for. The night boat moved through the hours of forgetting and into the familiar structure of the later caverns. The 8th, 9th, 10th. The crew did not speak about what they had seen. Some things don't need to be discussed to be carried. Dawn came as it always came. Ra emerged through Nehekau's passage and into the morning. But this morning he looked at Egypt below differently. With the awareness of someone who has just come from a place where things fall out of memory if no one holds them. He looked at the farmers. He looked at the children. He looked at the priests beginning their morning hymn. He looked at the woman who had recovered from her illness, now in her garden, planting something. Each of them. A held thing, a name still spoken, a face still present. The crossings continued. The hours of forgetting appeared 3 more times, each time differently placed, each time with different contents. Ra slowed each time, spoke each time. Thoth wrote each time. It became part of the crossing. It had always been part of the crossing. Ra had simply not noticed it before. There is something in that for all of us. The things we carry that we only notice when we stop to look at what the dark holds. The names, the songs, the faces, the small daily things that seem ordinary until you imagine them absent. Sleep is like this. The passage through dark that lets you return to morning having done something necessary that you cannot fully explain. You go under and you come back, and what you come back to is the same and different, depending on what the dark showed you. Rai had been making the crossing for as long as the world had existed. He knew what you are only beginning to discover tonight. The dark is not the enemy of morning. The dark is what morning is earned from. You cannot have one without the other. The night boat approached the fifth cavern in this particular crossing with Apep larger again. The second enlargement, the threat that had been growing across many nights. Set at the prow, Ra beside him, Thoth still writing. The passage ahead darker than it had ever been. Set drove the spear. Ra spoke the ancient name. Thoth recited the precise names of Apep's nature, the full accounting, every aspect named. The complete cataloging of what chaos is made of. Three together. The spear did not hold. The name did not hold. Thoth's recitation, the naming, held. Apep recoiled with a sound that reached the surface world, the earthquake, but larger. Egypt trembled. The Nile shivered. People woke from sleep and held each other. Below them, in the underworld, the passage was open, and the night boat was moving and morning was still possible. This story has been told for 3,000 years, not in the same words. The words changed, the priests changed, the temples changed, but the structure remained, whereas crossing night and day. The serpent in the dark, the dawn that is earned. How did this story survive so long? It survived because it is true, not literally. The sun does not literally sail a boat, but true in the way that the best stories are true. It describes something real about what light costs, and what the dark requires, and what it means to keep going when keeping going is the only option. The Egyptians who told this story were not primitive. They were precise. They built their temples to align with specific stars and specific sunrises. They mapped the underworld with the care of cartographers. They were saying something exact about the world, in the language of story. Every culture that came after Egypt, Greek, Roman, Christian, Islamic, inherited pieces of Ra's crossing. The solar god who dies and is reborn. The hero who descends into the underworld and returns. The serpent that is fought in the dark. These are not borrowings, they are recognitions. The story survived because it tells the truth about the part of every day that happens while you sleep. Something crosses the dark to bring you morning. Something fights the chaos so the world can continue. And someone, or something, does it again tomorrow. That has always been true. The Egyptians were first to write it down. After the largest Apep, after the earthquake, after the three-part defeat, the night boat moved through the remaining caverns with unusual speed, as if the dark itself had less resistance after the greatest confrontation. Set's hand on his spear was loose, the tension gone out of it. The eighth cavern, the ninth. Ra moved through them quietly, carrying the hours of forgetting, the words he had spoken, the shapes that had steadied. The dead here, the very old dead, stirred slightly more than usual at his passing, as if they had felt the night's intensity. In the 10th cavern, Mehen arrived, and this night he stayed longer than usual. His golden coils wrapped the boat more completely, the protective serpent offering more than was strictly required, as if he too had felt the night's weight and was responding to it with extra care. Ra felt the extra care. He looked at Mehen, the protective serpent, the one who asks nothing and gives the boat safe passage every night without acknowledgement. Ra said his name, just that. Mehen's scales shifted slightly. He had not expected to be named. The 11th cavern. Apep's second attempt of the night, smaller now, depleted by the 5th cavern's great defeat. Set's spear was sufficient. The passage cleared easily. Set did not lower the spear immediately. He held it raised a moment longer, just to be sure. The 12th cavern, the narrowest passage. Ra lowering his disc, the walls pressing close, and then Nahakau, the dawn serpent, opening his mouth. The transformation beginning, the night boat becoming the day boat in the dark of the passage. The oldest rebirth happening again, the eastern gate. the narrowest moment, the last place where morning was not yet certain. And then, as always, as it always had been, as it would always be, the gate opened. Dawn arrived. The world received it. Egypt woke. Not slowly, quickly, this morning, as if the trembling of the night had made people ready to greet the day with more intention. Markets opened earlier. The Nile was busy before the usual hour. Children were outside before their parents called them. The pharaoh stood on his palace roof watching the sun rise. He had felt the trembling in the night. He did not know what it meant. He knew it was from the underworld. He knew Ra had crossed it. He raised his hands toward the disk and said what pharaohs said. "You have come. You always come. You have come. You always come." Ra heard it, as he heard everything said directly and from the heart. He held it alongside the woman's recovered mourning and the child's upturned face, and the shapes on the walls of the hours of forgetting. The evidence accumulated. The crossing was worth it. The accumulation continued across many crossings. Something was building, not in the story's tension, but in Ra's fullness. The god was becoming more completely the thing he had always been. Osiris's phrase was working. He was remembering himself. And then came the night that would be the final climax of this part of Ra's long story. Not announced. The most important crossings never are. The night boat entered the Doat as always. The crew at their posts. The 12 caverns ahead. And in the 5th cavern, Apep larger than he had ever been. Not larger, immense. The passage completely blocked. Not partially. Completely. The night boat stopped. For the first time in 10,000 crossings. The boat stopped. There was no gap for Set's spear to find. There was no face of Apep visible to receive Thoth's naming. Set looked at the wall of serpent coils and said nothing. He had no spear thrust for this. Thoth looked at his papyrus and said nothing. The naming required a face, a feature, something to name toward. Ra looked at Apep, and Apep looked at Ra. That had never happened before. The serpent usually kept its eyes away from the solar disk. Ra set down the solar disk. The texts say this. He set it down on the deck of the night boat. The light still burning but no longer held, just resting there. And Ra stood at the proas himself, without the disk, in his own form, looking at Apep directly. And Ra spoke, not his ancient name for Apep, not the name Thoth used, not any of the ritual names. Ra told Apep his own story, the full story, in the dark of the 5th cavern, with the disk set down, and the boat stopped and Egypt's morning uncertain. He told Apep about the child with the dragonfly. He told Apep about the farmer pressing seeds into the black silt. He told Apep about the woman who recovered from illness and planted something in her garden. He told Apep about the hours of forgetting and the shapes on the walls. He told Apep about Thoth's private papyrus. He told Apep about Set, who murdered his brother and fights beside Ra every night anyway. He told Apep about Isis, who tricked the name from him and used it to heal the world. He told Apep about Osiris saying, "You have been remembering yourself." Ra told Apep about the pharaoh saying, "You have come. You always come." He told Apep about the priests who sang before dawn, because they believed it helped. He told Apep about the student who was asleep, while the scribe finished the lesson anyway. The story kept going. And then Apep moved, not toward the boat, not toward Ra. The coils shifted, reorienting, and the passage, not fully open, but a gap, a narrow gap, just wide enough for the night boat to pass, appeared. Apep had not retreated. He had simply made room. Ra picked up the solar disk. He held it again, but differently. Not the grip of someone carrying a burden. The grip of someone holding something they have chosen. He had set it down and picked it back up. That was not the same as never setting it down. The night boat moved through the gap, slowly. The coils closed on both sides, the passage barely sufficient. The solar disk's light touching Apep's scales as the boat moved between them. The chaos serpent did not move. He had made room. He held it. At the far end of the passage, Set turned back once and looked at Apep. The chaos serpent's eyes were still fixed forward. Not on Ra now, but on the space where Ra had been. Set said nothing. He turned forward again and gripped his spear and kept moving. The remaining caverns, the 6th through the 12th, passed quickly. The oars of forgetting were there, briefly, and Ra slowed and spoke one thing into it, one name from very long ago, and moved on. Mihun wrapped the boat in the 10th. Nahukau waited at the end. The transformation inside Nahukau. Night boat to day boat. Adam to Kepri. The dark to the edge of light. The last time this would happen exactly this way. Because something had changed in the 5th cavern. Something that would not change back. The eastern gate opened. The disk blazed. The Nile below went gold. Egypt woke. The priests at Heliopolis began the morning hymn. A child outside looked up at the sun. The woman in her garden looked up. The pharaoh on his roof looked up. The morning was the same, and entirely different. Phenel Kiamex. Ra had told Apep his story, and Apep had made room. Not permanently. Apep would be there tomorrow night, coiled and waiting as always. But tonight had shown something neither of them had known before. The story is the strongest thing. The account of what we are crossing for. Thoth wrote everything. He wrote the stopping of the boat. He wrote Ra setting down the disc. He wrote the story Ra told and Apep's response. He wrote the gap in the coils and the slow passage through, and Ra picking up the disc again. He wrote, the sun remembered why. Might felt the balance of the morning and nodded. The scales had held through the most extreme night the crossing had faced. Balance is not the absence of difficulty. It is what holds through difficulty. She had known that. Tonight had demonstrated it. Set, Ra's strange protector, the murderer who fights for continuation, stood at his post in the morning light. He had not driven his spear last night. The spear was not what worked. He held it anyway. He would have it ready tonight. The one who shows up night after night does not question which night's method worked. Hathor played her sistrum in a key she had not played before. The sound fell on Egypt as a morning light of extraordinary warmth. The kind that painters said they had been trying to capture for years. The kind that makes you stop whatever you are doing and look up. Below, in Memphis, a child was drawing. She was drawing the sun, the way children draw the sun, a circle with lines coming out, nothing like Ra's solar disk, everything like the feeling of the sun. Ra saw it. He felt seen by it in a way that the priest's careful art never quite managed. The morning continued. The afternoon arrived. The light went amber rose. Thoth was writing. Maat was at the prow. Set was at his post. Hathor's sistrum played. Ra was at the helm. The crossing continued as it always had, as it would. The Amenti gate would open at dusk. The night boat would be waiting. Apep would be in his cavern already regenerating, the gap in his coils closed. The hours of forgetting would be somewhere in the passage. And Ra would make the crossing again. As he always would. And Egypt would watch. The farmers, the children, the woman in her garden, the pharaoh on his roof, the priests at Heliopolis before dawn, the child who draws circles with lines. They would all watch the sun come back and say, in different words, in different ways, you have come, you always come. This story has been in the world for 3,000 years. In that time, the sun has risen and set over 1 million human generations. Everything those people built has changed or is gone. The pyramids still stand but different. The temples are sand. The language is unspoken, and every morning the sun rises. The Egyptians who told this story did not know about the people who would come after them. They did not know about the centuries that would pass, the religions that would rise and fall, the languages their own language would become. They knew the sun would rise tomorrow. That was enough certainty to build a civilization on. Rare is still rising. The sun, the actual sun, the one you can look at sideways in the morning, has made Ra's crossing approximately 4 billion times. 4 billion times the light has come back after the dark. Not one exception, not one failure. Apep has not won. The ancient Egyptians would find comfort in that number if they could hear it. They would say, we always knew. We said so in stone and papyrus and hymn. For 3,000 years, the crossing is made. Every night, the morning arrives. Every day we told you. And tonight, right now, Ra is in the underworld. The night boat is in one of the 12 caverns. Thoth is riding. Set has already fought in the 5th cavern and moved on. And somewhere in the dark below everything, the eastern gate is getting closer. Morning is coming. For you specifically, tonight specifically. The story of Ra is the story of every morning you have ever woken to. Every time you came back from sleep into the light, something had made the crossing. The sun had done its impossible routine, and here you are, having rested while the crossing happened. Tonight you are part of that story, the sleeping ones, the ones the crossing is for, the ones whose faces Ra looks down at and thinks this is why. You are the why you always were. The night boat is moving. Set is at the prow. Thoth is writing. Maat's feather has not tipped. Hathor's sistrum is quiet now, the deep of the night, the music resting. But she keeps it in her hand, for when morning needs it. The 12th cavern is not far now. Nihakau is already there waiting. He has been there for 10,000 crossings, mouth ready to open. The transformation ready to happen. He is the most reliable figure in the whole story. The one who makes the morning mechanically possible. The eastern gate is there. On the other side your morning, already assembled. The light already ready. The warmth already measured. The Nile already turning gold below what will be the sunrise. Everything ready. The gate about to open. The gate will open, it always opens. Ra will emerge as Capri, young, radiant. The scarab, faced dawn carrying the night's entire story in the warmth of the morning light. Apep will recoil into his waiting. The crossing will have been made again. And somewhere, a child will draw the sun, circle and lines, and Ra will see it and feel seen, and Hathor will play the new key. And Thoth will write, the sun remembered why, and the farmers will press seeds into the black silt, and the woman in the garden will tend what she planted when she recovered. The Pharaoh will say, you have come, you always come, and he will be right, and Thoth will add it to the record, and Maat's feather will rest level, and Set will grip his spear for tonight's crossing, and the crossing will continue. The story is not finished. Ra is still sailing. The crossing continues tonight, right now, while you are reading this. While you are hearing this, the boat is somewhere in the 12 caverns, close to morning. Very close. Let it be close to morning for you too. Let whatever dark crossing you are in the middle of, the night of it, the hard part of it, be in its last caverns. Let Nihakau be waiting. Let the gate be ready. Ra is coming. He is always coming. He has never not come. And when he arrives, when the light arrives, it will be because the crossing was made. Because Set fought and Thoth named and Mihen protected, and Osiris offered warmth at midnight. Because the story was told. Because it mattered. The gate opened, the sun rose. As it has 4 billion times, as it will. The child looked up, the woman looked up, the Pharaoh looked up. The farmers stopped their work for one moment and looked up. Ra sailed into the first hour of the new day. Still going. Still going. That is the whole of the story's wisdom, held in 2 words. Everything Ra has been through, the venom, the forgetting, the hours of forgetting, the Apep who filled the passage completely, the setting down and the picking up of the disc. And still going. Thoth wrote those words too, still going, in the official record, and in the private one, and in the archive of the almost gone. The same 2 words in every register. Because the most important thing is also the simplest thing. The morning was warm, the light was particular. Hathor played the new key and Egypt stopped to look up, and no one could explain why the light felt different today, only that it did. Something had been through the dark and come back, and was still going. You can feel it when that happens. The crossing continues. It has always continued. It will always continue. Tonight the boat is in the underworld. Tomorrow morning the disk will rise. The day after, the same. Every night the crossing. Every morning the arrival. The most faithful thing in the world is the sun. Ra has never broken his promise. Not once. The story has been told, not finished. Ra's crossing never finishes. But the telling has reached its resting place. The place where the story breathes and lets you breathe with it. What Ra carried was not the solar disk. The disk was the instrument. What Ra carried was the reason. And the reason was, as he told Apep in the fifth cavern, the child with the dragonfly, the farmer's thumb in the silt, the woman in her garden. The Egyptians built temples to align with specific sunrises because they understood something. The relationship between the sun and the earth is not general. It is specific. The light arrives at a particular angle, at a particular moment, for a particular place. Ra's crossing is always for somewhere specific. Tonight the crossing is for you. Specifically, the same sun that aligned with Abu Simbel twice a year has found your window, your room, your sleeping form. Ra's disk does not miss anyone. That is Maat's guarantee. The balance is complete only when the light reaches everything. Ra told Apep the crossing is worth it because of the specific things it lights. He did not say because of the abstract concept of humanity. He said, because of the child, the farmer, the woman. Specificity was the argument. Particular lives are what make the crossing necessary. That is the whole meaning, not the cosmic architecture, not the theological system. The charmered, the woman, you. The crossing is made because specific people need specific mornings to live specific lives. The rest is just the machinery that makes that possible. Set taught something too. The complicated one. The one with the history that cannot be cleaned up. He showed that you do not need to be good to be necessary. You need to show up. You need to drive the spear when the spear is what the moment requires. Thoth taught something. Witness matters. The one who records what happens, who writes it carefully and keeps the record and does not lose it, is not less important than the one who acts. The archive is as necessary as the spear. Maat taught something. Balance is not peace. Balance is what holds while everything else is in motion. The feather does not tip when the night is difficult. The feather holds because holding is what feathers do when they are the measure of truth. Isis taught something. Love and cleverness and a plan are not separate things. The trap she set for Ra came from love as much as ambition, and Ra, in choosing to give the name, in choosing not to punish her, taught that being completely known is not the same as being destroyed. Osiris taught something. To merge briefly with the sun at midnight is not to become the sun. It is to receive warmth, and to give warmth in return. The king of the dead and the god of light needed each other. No one is complete without their opposite. Hathor taught something. Joy is not decoration. Hathor's sistrum is not an ornament on the solar barque. Her music is part of what makes Egypt able to receive the light. A world without joy cannot fully use what it is given. And Apep taught something too. The thing that opposes you is not the enemy of your story. It is the thing that makes your story necessary. Without Apep, there is no crossing. Without crossing, there is no morning. Without morning, there is no life to cross for. The story of Ra is the story of why anything continues. Not because it must, because it chooses to. Because the child with the dragonfly is worth the crossing. Because the farmer's thumb in the silt is worth the fight in the fifth cavern. Because you, sleeping now, are worth it. The Egyptians knew this. They built it in stone, painted it on papyrus, sang it before dawn, taught it to children who fell asleep during the lesson. The knowledge passed through sleep, which is appropriate. Because sleep is how you participate in Ra's crossing without knowing it. You are participating in Ra's crossing right now. By sleeping. By resting while the night does its work. By trusting, as the Egyptians trusted, that the morning is coming, and you do not need to stay awake to bring it. Rest is part of the crossing. The crossing is being made, right now. The night boat is in one of the 12 caverns. Set has already passed the 5th. Thoth is writing. Mihin is in the 10th. The eastern gate is getting closer with every heartbeat. Let your breath slow. The way the desert slows at night. Not stop, just quieter. The way the Nile moves in the deep hours. Still going, but without urgency. The crossing is being made. You don't have to do anything but breathe and let the dark carry you. Ra is on his way. He has never been late. He will not be tonight. The morning is already built, the light assembled, the warmth measured, the Nile ready to go gold. It is waiting for him the way a room waits for the person who left the lamp on. Sleep now. The crossing is in good hands. It always has been. Roth is still going. Set is still fighting. Thoth is still writing. Maat's feather has not tipped. The morning is coming. It is always coming. And you specifically, are who it is coming for. Ra's story did not end when Egypt's civilization ended. The story moved. It traveled through the cultures that came after, carried in the structure of the thing itself, because some truths do not need permission to continue. The Greeks heard of Ra and recognized something. Their Apollo, god of the sun, the crossing, the light, carried pieces of the older story, not copies, recognitions. When you find the same truth in two places, that tells you something about the truth, not about borrowing. The Romans inherited the Greek inheritance. Their Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, celebrated on the winter solstice, the day the sun turns back toward summer. Ra had known about turning back toward summer for 3,000 years before anyone named it Sol Invictus, the hero who descends into the underworld and returns. Orpheus, Heracles, Persephone, Inanna before them all. They are all making Ra's crossing. The structure of the descent and return is the oldest story human beings tell. Egypt simply told it most completely. The serpent in the dark, Apep, appears in every tradition. The dragon that must be fought. The chaos that must be pushed back. St. George's dragon, Thor's Jo or Mungander. The Vedic Vritra. The pattern is universal because the darkness and the thing that opposes it are universal. The scarab beetle, Khepri, became one of the most widely copied symbols in the ancient world. Egyptian amulets were traded from Mesopotamia to Nubia to the Mediterranean. People who had never heard Ra's story wore the scarab because they recognized something in it. The rolling of the sun. The transformation of what you find into what you need. Thoth's legacy is libraries. The god who recorded everything became the patron of scribes, of scholarship, of the preservation of knowledge. Alexandria's great library, the largest in the ancient world, was built in his tradition. What Thoth wrote in the underworld, human scholars tried to do on earth. Maat became the foundation of legal systems. The Egyptian concept of balance, truth, and right order passed through Greek philosophy and Roman law into every legal tradition that followed. When a court today seeks justice, it seeks Maat. The scales of justice in courthouses everywhere are Maat's scales. And the crossing itself, the daily sunrise, still happens. 4 billion times and counting. The sun rose this morning. It will rise tomorrow. The specific people who need specific mornings are still here. The child with the dragonfly has a modern equivalent. Somewhere tonight, a child is watching something small and alive with complete attention, and it is enough. Ra's legacy is the morning, every morning. The one that came today and the one that is coming now. The one that Set and Thoth and men are earning right now in the dark below the world, while you rest. That is what 3,000 years of telling has kept alive. The morning still coming. Still for you. The story rests here, not ends. Ra's crossing never ends. But this is where we stop watching and let the night do what nights do. The 12 caverns are doing their work, the dead in their places, Thoth with his pen, Set with his spear, which he does not need to raise just yet, the passage open, the boat moving, all of it, in order. Osiris is in his hall. The midnight merging has happened, or is about to happen, or has just passed. Time in the dot moves differently. The king of the dead and the sun are in their ancient relation, warmth and permanence, together in the dark. The hours of forgetting are somewhere in the passage. Ra has spoken into them. The last name, the old song. Thoth has written it. The almost gone steadied for another night. The archive holds. Mihin is in the 10th cavern. His golden coils are around the boat. The protection is complete. Ra is inside warmth, inside safety, moving toward the eastern gate. You are inside warmth, inside safety, moving toward your morning. The eastern gate is not far now. The light is assembling on its other side. Your morning, your specific morning, is being prepared. The warmth of it is already there, waiting for the gate to open and let it through. If tonight felt like something, subscribe. We'll be here next week. Another story, another night like this one. Now back to Rar and to your rest. Nahubkau is opening his mouth. The transformation is beginning. The night boat is becoming the day boat in the dark of the passage. Rai is becoming Kipri. Young, radiant, the dawn form that has no memory of the night's difficulty, only the readiness of morning. It always opens. Capri emerges. Egypt receives its morning. The child looks up. The farmer begins. The woman tends her garden. The pharaoh says what pharaohs say. And somewhere, a child draws a circle with lines coming out of it. Ra sees it, and keeps going. We'll be here, when you're ready. Sleep now. The crossing is made. The morning is coming. Ra is still going. And you are the reason.